Looking for exercises to help your child gain better head control? Follow along with this gentle movement to help your child's brain coordinate their head, their spine, and their pelvis. Really good head control isn't just about neck muscle strength. It's really more to do with how our brains can coordinate our heads, our spines, and our pelvis. Start using slow, gentle movements to access the potential of your child's brain to organize their head, their spine, and their pelvis. I'm Jen, an Anat Baniel method practitioner, and I help parents just like you use slow, gentle movements right at home to help your child's brain reorganize their entire bodies for better head control, rolling over, independent sitting, and standing. Start in sitting with your child on your lap, if it's comfortable for your child. I happen to be sitting on the floor because I'm comfortable on the floor, but if this is uncomfortable for you, you can sit in a chair with your child on your lap. So with one hand on your hip bone here, I want you as parents to feel the movement first, and then we'll transfer it to your child. One hand on your hip bone, I want you to imagine your pelvis like a giant ball that can roll backwards and forward. So imagine your pelvis like a giant ball that can roll backwards and forward. So with my hand on my hip, I'm rolling back more towards my tailbone, and now I'm sticking my tailbone out. Rolling back to put more pressure onto my tailbone, and now I'm sticking my tailbone out, rolling forward. Now let's transfer step one to our child. So you can have both hands on their hip bones just like this, and as you roll your pelvis backwards to put more pressure onto your tailbone and forward to stick your tailbone out, follow along with the movement with your child's pelvis. So rolling back and rolling forward, rolling back and rolling forward. Now, the whole point isn't to force your child's pelvis to move. The whole point is actually to use your hands like little spotlights to bring attention for your child's brain to pay attention that, hey, they have a pelvis that has the possibility to roll backwards and forwards. Now, step number two is to have one hand on the sternum, the chest area here, and one hand on the pelvis. Now, roll your pelvis backwards to put more pressure onto your tailbone and feel what happens underneath your hand that's on the sternum. Do you feel the sinking down of your sternum? Now roll your pelvis forward to stick your tailbone out and feel what happens underneath your hand. Does your sternum rise up more towards the ceiling? Roll the pelvis backwards, the sternum sinks down. Roll the pelvis forward, the sternum rises up. Now we're going to transfer that movement to our children. So have one hand on their hip bone just like this, nice and soft and gentle. The other hand place on their sternum right about here. This is the sternum bone right here. It connects the ribs in the middle. Just make sure your hand is not too far down here. That doesn't feel very good. Make sure it's just somewhere right below the collarbone, so right about here. And your hand is soft and gentle like a light little cloud. Remember, we're not trying to move our kids. We're helping their brain pay attention that they have body parts here that might be able to help make the movement easier, more efficient, and better coordinated. Okay, so one hand on your child's hip bone here, the other hand softly on the sternum right there. And as you roll your pelvis backwards to put more pressure on the tailbone, feel your sternum sinking. Can you feel the same in your child? So as you roll your pelvis, their pelvis rolls backwards. As you sink down with your chest, does their sternum sink down too? And as you roll forward with your pelvis to stick your tailbone out, does your sternum rise and does their sternum rise? Sinking down, rolling your tailbone underneath you, rolling your tailbone forward and rising up. Sinking and rising. Now step three, place one hand on your pelvis, the other hand on your forehead. And as you roll your pelvis backwards to put more pressure onto your tailbone, notice what happens to your head. My head is sinking down towards the floor. What's true for you? And as I roll my pelvis forward to stick my tailbone out, what happens to my head? I start to look upwards. So rolling the pelvis backwards, looking down, rolling the pelvis forward, looking up. Can you feel how much more movement there is in your entire spine between your pelvis and your head as your brain starts to connect all of these different pieces? Now let's transfer that to our children. So one hand on their pelvis right here, the other hand lightly on their forehead. Remember, use a soft touch. And in this position here, roll your pelvis backwards to put more pressure onto your tailbone and take a look down and feel if your child's pelvis is rolling back and their head is moving down. Now roll your pelvis upwards and start looking up towards the ceiling, feeling your child's pelvis roll forward and their head coming up, and then rolling downwards, looking down, rolling upwards, looking up. Now just take a moment and simply look downwards towards the floor and upwards towards the ceiling, and just notice if more of your spine is participating. Is there actually movement in your pelvis? Does it feel like your head, spine, and pelvis are a little bit more well organized, a little bit more coordinated? And you can see if anything's changed for your child by having an interesting toy that you place down on the floor in front of them and seeing if more of their body is participating in that movement of looking downwards, and is more of their body participating in the movement of looking upwards. Has their brain taken in that information of their pelvis, spine, and head to help them make a simple movement of looking down and up a little more functional? Share any changes that you notice down below. And if you want more gentle, respectful movements to help your child gain better head control, check out this video here. And we'll see you in the next video.